Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Retail Code. Today we have Gary Newberry and our guest, April Sabral. I'll let Gary, you go in first, and then we'll introduce April.
Okay, my name's Gary Newberry. I'm a senior exec on call, specialising in rapid performance improvement across retail supply chains and the last mile. And my purpose in life is to inspire retail business leaders to think big, be bold, scale, adapt, and win one epic supply chain at a time.
Love it. April?
Yeah, thanks for having me on. My name's April Sabral. I am the founder and president of retailu, which is an online e-learning platform for field operations teams to develop their leadership skills. And I'm also an author of a book called The Positive Effect, A Retail Leader's Guide to Changing the World. And my mission and purpose in life is to build next level leaders. There's a real thirst for it in the world, and that's what I'm here to do.
Great. Thank you for joining us. And my name is Liza Amlani. I'm from the Retail Strategy Group. I help retailers dramatically improve profitability and increase organizational effectiveness with their merchandise optimization and things like speed to market and getting closer to the customer. So today we're going to talk about the retail labor force. There's a lot of chatter out there across North America and Canada on what is going on in retail and why is there a shortage? I'm going to pass the torch to Gary because I think you have a few stats that you'd like to share.
Yeah, recently Stats Canada released some figures for June, and everybody was going, great, we're on our way to recovery. And they issued 232,000 new jobs were added into the working population in Canada. When you scratch the surface, there was a decrease in full-time jobs of 33,000, and the rest of the jobs are part-time. When you scratch the surface a bit further, I found that it was 2/3 of those new jobs or new positions were actually in retail, bricks and mortar, and food service. So what's happening that would generate a huge swathe of part-time work rather than the commitment to full-time people?
And I think what I'd like to know, and I love to deep dive this with you, April, as you're in the education part of retail, what does this really mean for workers in retail from frontline to back office, corporate jobs, even things like retail tech, Shopify's of the world? And where do you see the labor force going? And why do you think that there's this shortage or push into part-time?
We shouldn't be surprised by this, first of all. We've just reopened from a pandemic. Yeah. There's been so much uncertainty in terms of, are we going to stay open? Are we going to close? Retailers had to furlough a ton of people in the last year. So I think that there's a nervousness from the retailer's perspective of hiring full-time employees and making that commitment today. Where that's going to go in the next 30 days, who knows? We've seen so much unpredictability and change in the last year. But I really think it comes down to, if I think back to running stores, which is what I did for 30 years, the push for part-time was always to control your labor spend because you weren't sure on traffic and where those sales were going to come from, particularly as we have gone into online sales. If you were a smart retailer last year, you really built your online sales and you really focused on that. So are they nervous about traffic coming back into stores? Probably.
What does it also say about it? Everyone's still obsessed about customer experience. It's like the catch-all for anything that we do in the store, or our customer experience. When we actually translate that into day-to-day, machinations, we actually want people who are committed to delivering this at store level. So if we're sitting in the corporate office, we go, oh, this is what it needs to be. But when we're actually on the shop floor and we're being asked to control, the queue, the lineup coming in, look after visual merchandising, tilling up for people, helping people, we're actually putting that whole brand experience in the hands of part-timers. And just another quick stat or factoid around that, that shift to part-time work, most of that growth was in the 15 to 24 year age group. Now, you said you have been around for 30 years in store. You hardly look that. But if we think about it, I thought I'd get that one in. I thought is that the right way to deliver a brand experience? I mean, at what point do retailers have to say, to advance our cause here and deliver something that is compelling for customers and they feel comfortable in our stores, both safety and also comfortable to buy in our stores? Surely we can't hand that over to a whole bunch of school leavers and university people, all that stuff that they've traditionally used in the past. We've got to be looking, I'm sure, for a different solution to this problem.
Yeah, that's interesting because, 70% of the workforce is generally part-time. I remember going away I've worked in different businesses where the philosophy was have more full-timers because full-timers are more committed, they have more product knowledge, they understand that they are trained more effectively. And I can agree with that just from when I was running David's team. We had 135 T's on the wall at any time. So if you were working 4 hours a week, good luck retaining all that product knowledge information to actually provide that service to the customer, right? So there's it swings, right? But I don't know, it's interesting because if you look back, let's say 15 years ago when I was in retail and we were using on-call shifts a lot. Now I know in Canada we had gone away from on-call shifts in the last couple of years because of work-life balance and creating a really good employee experience and not wanting employees to be on call, right? Because their life was on pause. But we may see on-call shifts coming back. Who knows? Because it wasn't really a legal requirement to get rid of them. It was really more a philosophy of like encouraging people to feel more secure in their job and being able to plan their lives. So that might be an interesting concept to kind of explore, bringing back the on-call shift. If you have good training and you have effective leaders in your business, then they should be able to empower a part-time workforce. They should be able to communicate and train them. There's a ton of communication tools now, right? Like Nudge or Retail Zipline that are there to effectively communicate with those part-time employees at that age group. And they're designed in a way kind of Instagram-ish or, bite-sized communication so that they're reading it when they're not at work. We use things like that at David's Tea. So that's another way of making sure that people are really well trained, because what it comes down to is, are they trained? Are they knowledgeable? And do they have a manager that knows how to lead them and execute what the company is asking them to do by working through a team? So whether that's part-time or full-time, to me, the manager in that building really makes a difference in a bricks and mortar store. And there's always talk around like part-time, full-time, sales training. But if you have a manager that doesn't know how to be organized, doesn't know how to communicate effectively, can't follow up, can't delegate, empower a team, then it doesn't matter what your sales force looks like, quite honestly. And I can tell you that from personal experience, from changing store managers, from changing district managers and directors, and then seeing the trickle down effect. So I think it's going to be an interesting next 30 to 60, 90 days to see how we manage it. But there is solutions out there that can help them with this workforce. And I'm excited actually to see young people, this age group, coming into retail, because I think we make assumptions about them that they're lazy, that they don't want to work. And I can tell you, I'm working with a non-profit right now, sponsoring actually that age group coming into the workforce in retail and promoting retail as a career. And they're all super excited about it. So I think we've got to start making assumptions about them too, right?
Yeah, I love that actually. And you bring up some really good points around what the future of work could be. So we know that AI and retail tech has changed the way we work in the last, I keep counting forward, like 18 months now, from developing, sourcing product to buying and selling product. That workforce now in retail has enabled automation and AI, for example. So that means the organization needs to rethink the way that they're working. A lot of skill sets have become outdated. So in some cases, you could say that, these part-time staff that have taken a lot of the workforce by storm right now, maybe they are a little bit more technologically advanced and they're a little bit more capable as retailers are rethinking the way that they're working. Well, I think that even though the organization has been impacted on the back end, the front end, like you mentioned Nudge, and you mentioned, another retail tech solution that will help salespeople and frontline workers and brand ambassadors speak to the corporate office, the merchants, the planners, the marketers. And I think that it's going to really change the way we retail from end to end. So I personally, I think it's exciting. I mean, of course, 30, 60, 90 days, we'll see what happens.
We'll see what
But
happens. I mean, I hope so, because I do think this has been a significant change. And I do think people do want to work. I think people will
yeah,
get back to work. I think it's really tough for anybody in executive positions right now at the top of the food chain in an organization trying to make those decisions, what's best. And being flexible is and agile is really going to be important. And I think
yeah,
that's where those part-time employees come in to
yeah,
benefit organization.
So
agreed. And that model is almost more scalable,
Hmm.
right? When you're adding robotics and AI and retail tech tools to supplement those part-time workers and freelancers.
I'm just wondering, or left pondering, that imagine that June reopened up and or started to open up, and it absorbed all those people who were willing to work part time. But as we go through July and we're still in restricted hours, capacity, whatever, I wonder, is there more pull of part-time workers while we're going through this period of uncertainty? Or are we now having to bump into the fact that we now have to either not recruit or recruit full-time only because we've exhausted the part-time pool? Nobody else wants to come here, especially if they can carry on government subsidies, because it might actually be better for them to do that rather than come into a
Yeah,
store, work part-time, lose the benefit, and also potentially, depending on their mindset, be
yeah,
exposed to COVID itself. So I wonder
yeah,
what is July, August really going to look like when we see the job figures, and does this actually impose a constraint on what retailers may be able to do certainly in the next 2 months in terms of their own
yeah,
expansion plans? Because this is a incredibly vital time for retailers. They've got through to this point. They've reopened or slung open their doors. What
yeah,
happens next if there isn't any more
exactly.
part-time people?
And I think, April, this is a great question for you because you're based in the US right now. And everything that I've read, like in the Wall Street Journal, around upskilling and what's been going on with labor, that, maybe the expectations have been super low. And now retailers are throwing incentives in there and upping their game. What do you see in the US?
Yeah, it's a good question. The US hasn't been as impacted as Canada because we were not closed, right,
Mm,
compared to Canada. So I don't think there was certainly a huge impact because the market's bigger. There was certainly retailers that closed, right? But there was a ton
yeah,
of brands that popped up that were D2C that actually started opening stores. That's kind of interesting. But also, they were not given the government subsidies in the US like Canada had done, right? Canada was providing every month a payment. There was only 3 stimulus checks in the US for the last year. So
wow.
people here want to work. They want to earn money. They want to get out, and it's not as been closed down. Whereas Canada, it's very different. You've been closed in Ontario for almost a year. You've been in serious social
Yeah,
distance. When I moved here back in March, I felt like, wow, everybody's back to life as normal. And I've traveled across the US in the past month and a half. I've been to New York, I've been down to Florida, and business is busy. Malls are busy. People are walking around shopping. They want that engagement. They want to be back talking to people. And I think that's an exciting time for retail because I think
yeah,
people, no matter what technology and everything that is changing and skills are changing and skills are becoming obsolete, at the end of the day, in a store, to me, it's always been the same skills. Whether you introduce a new technology or a new POS or a new way to communicate,
hmm,
people still have to communicate and talk to people. They still have to share product knowledge. They still have to smile. You still expect people to be friendly. So to me, that really hasn't changed. So it's going to be interesting. But yeah, there is some differences between the two, just in the sense of what the government's provided in terms of help for people to get through this.
yeah. I'd like to ask you about the education part of retail. I'll give you an example, and I'd love to hear your take on it. So there's a school in Portland. I'm sure you've heard of it. It's called Pencil. It's Dr. Dwayne Edwards School. And what he does is he gets a lot of great brands like Nike and maybe Under Armour, and even Yellow Brick does the same thing out of Brooklyn, where they'll get these big brands to sponsor students to get training and then hire them. So that gives them incentive that they're going to work for this great brand, but they're getting very specific training. Is this something that you do at Retail U?
Yeah, actually, we've just launched a partnership. So I'm really excited that you shared that question. And based on the success of things like what he's done, because, retail store staff has always been perceived as an uneducated job, right? But a lot of us
Yeah.
that went into retail stores back in the day ended up growing into vice president roles and running a ton of stores because we had the shop floor experience. So we're trying to promote that retail is a great career. You can start off as a part-time person. It is an educated job in terms of skill set, right? All those people skills. So we've just launched a program with a nonprofit organization in Toronto specifically because of the need there. And they go through a training program that they've been running for over 10 years, but we've just extended and put a Retail U program together to teach them how to ace their first job in retail. And that course has got like masterclass style experts in it, like Ron Thurston's one of them. He wrote
Yeah.
Retail Pride. He was the vice president of Intermix, right? Solange Strom, who founded L'Occitane in Canada. So these guys have got together with us. And now we're asking retailers, listen, you're looking for staff. You can sponsor youth going through this program, high school and college. And then at the end of it, you can give them an internship, exactly what he's doing.
Mhm.
And so what that does is help funnel the pipeline, get people attracted to retail as a career, and fill those vacancies in stores, because we're really focused on in-store experience, not head office and merchandising
Right.
bank. There's been programs like that in the past, but there's never really been one to funnel staff
Yeah.
into stores, into part-time roles, and then potentially go into a management role. So Arden, which is a big Canadian fashion brand, they were the first retailer to jump on board and sponsor because they have a ton of vacancies and they just weren't having applicants.
Yeah.
And going on Indeed and posting jobs is great. You're spending money on it, but wouldn't it be
Yeah.
better to train some people to get the skills and get excited about coming to work for you, right? They're going to show up already with some training provided. So,
Yeah.
One of the things back in the day, when I was filling shelves, because I did, there was some like, this is how you do things. This is what the standards are that we want you to do. If a customer kicks you when you're putting bread into the shelf, just smile sweetly and say, "Oh, thank you very much." But the other side of the onboarding is the actual socialization of the individual into. You mentioned it earlier, April, being part of a team. I think that if retailers or store managers have that mindset of bringing people into the team to execute in a consistent way, that's probably a big difference between those ones who just see it as labor coming in, get that done, get on with
Yeah.
it, come back when you've done it. So they've got no sense of how their work fits into the team's work.
well, and one thing we know about this generation, I'll tell you, I have a 17-year-old, right, that they want to have meaning and purpose in what they're doing. I mean, they want to make sure that it fits with who they are and they want meaning. So that is important. And I think what Arden are doing is great because Arden have programs in their company about mindfulness and caring for their employees. And so I think it's a win-win. I hope to see more retailers honestly jump on board with this because I think it could be a way for them to fill their gaps really, really fast
Yeah.
with people that are excited to work there. And when we built the program, we were asking store managers, what's the top things that you end up coaching first-time job employees on? And they're like, how to call out for a schedule, how to take feedback and not get defensive and not take it personal.
Yeah.
It's like these small things that they don't learn in school. We're teaching them that. So they're going to show up. You can give them a job, you can sponsor them. They're all going to already have this knowledge, which is
Yeah.
amazing. So I really do hope more people jump on board.
Yeah, it actually reminds me of me working 20 something years ago on the shop floor at Harrods before I was recruited to do that before I went into the buying office. But there's a lot of programs out there, from back in the day. It's almost like, let's go back to the old school way of thinking, start on the shop floor, work your way up into the office, or they have like the management trainee programs. Those used to be big in department stores. And I think that it'd be great to push that again and talk about retailing as a career that you could be proud of. As a retailer, I'm going to say that. And
Yeah.
I think
Well,
you agree with me.
And remember that what retailers used to do is actually having open houses where they'd invite customers
Yeah.
in to sit down and say, how are we doing? What do
Yeah.
we need to do around here? What's top of your mind? How can we better service you? It's
Yeah.
all, to me, it all seems to be done at head office with data. and we actually need
Yeah.
real customer interface between the store team and the consumers who are coming in to be served by that store team. I
I
think,
think
Yeah.
I think they need to work together. I don't think it's one or the other. And
Yeah.
that's the
Agreed.
dilemma that most organizations find themselves in, because they swing one way and then swing another way because you
Yeah.
can only focus on certain things. We saw that when Omni and that all came into play. It was
Yeah.
all focused on building online. But at the end of the day, we know in life, balance is what makes us successful. So you have to have that in your organization. You can't just go after one thing. I think it has to be a combination. So it's how do
Yes.
you get those offices and the field to work together and not work in silo? I think that's a
Yeah.
huge challenge for leaders leading any organization today.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. And I love that we brought you on to talk about this. Gary, did you have any final thoughts for
no, I thought it
April
was
before?
a really refreshing
Amazing.
conversation. So
Yes, I
thank you,
love it.
April. I really
April,
appreciate it.
do you want to leave us with like one big idea, and then we can shut this down?
Or
Ooh.
what's the thing we're not talking about, but we should?
One
Yeah.
big idea. Wow. That's a loaded question, but I would
know.
say one big idea is, to me, is, you know what, it's always comes back to leadership no matter what. Every organization I've worked in, anywhere I've been in the world, everything that works always comes back to leadership. So if you're a leader or not a leader with a title, you still have leadership in you. So develop yourself, keep growing, keep learning, keep adding value to people that you work with, and listen to those around you, and you can't really go wrong. So just, I'm always going to say, focus on your leadership development. I'm passionate about it. I want to build next level leaders. I think the world is hungry for them right now.
Well, on that bombshell, leadership is everything. I think it's a wrap.
Thanks, April, for joining us. Thanks, Gary.
Oh, thanks.
We hope you enjoyed the conversation. Hit the like button and leave your comments. Connect with us on LinkedIn to get the heads up on future episodes of The Retail Code.